At this point, we spend a good amount of time writing out some basic SQL, and, well, we've really not written SQL that kind of reflects a real world situation, to be totally honest with you. We've been working with single tables inside of single databases. So, for example, we've had this cities table over in pg-sql.com. That was the only table inside that database. And then as you've gone through some different exercises, you've been working with a totally separate database that had a table of phones inside of it. Now, in any real world application, it is pretty darn rare to have just one table of data in a database. It is totally possible, and it probably exists somewhere out there, but you're probably not really going to see this in the wild too often. So, even though it would be kind of easy and straightforward for us to continue working with a single table of data to learn more about SQL, well, it just doesn't reflect reality. So, I kind of want to make things just a little bit more challenging for us. We're going to move ahead starting to work on a database for a kind of photo sharing application. We're going to work with multiple tables inside of a single database, and I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to be a little bit more challenging to understand. The reason that we're going to go to some more complicated stuff right away so quickly in this course is that, well, it just reflects reality. It reflects what you are going to actually be doing on a daily basis when you work with Postgres. So again, even though we could continue working with a single table, it just wouldn't be as great a use of time for us. Okay, so now we've got a good idea of how we're going to move forward. Let's have a discussion about how we might design a photo sharing application database and some of the different tables that might need to exist inside of it.